Oh, yeah.
So back pocket.
Yeah, yeah, whatever's fine.
Oops.
Whatever's easier.
The receivers are right behind the stage, so that's perfect.
Okay.
Give this a little tuck. Actually, just go the other way. Oh. This is not the microphone I wanted. It's okay. Just set up a little backwards. And I'm going to go grab that windscreen off the table real quick, and I'll be right back.
Okay. This will be fun, I hope.
What's that?
I hope this will be fun.
It should be fun. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
And you're doing the stills?
No, I'm filming.
Oh, you're doing live, you're filming with that as well? Wow, cool.
Yeah, I'm not doing live. I'm filming Alini.
Kevin, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Yeah,
So
I'm
we've
with
got
the
3
documentary.
angles.
I'm with the documentary though called The Future of Energy.
Oh, cool.
And I'll probably catch an interview with you.
Nice, nice. Very cool. Love it. Well, that's fun.
It is, right?
Yeah. That's cool that they let you do that and come in here to do that. Maybe I should dance or something up there, you know, like.
Yeah, like a 40,
If there were more people, we could do the wave, but it's just not going to work with this group. We could do the online wave, though.
The what?
For all you streamers out there, we'll do the online wave.
Oh, yeah.
Like it starts at California and heads east.
Quite some people walking around at the booth camp, but they will enter. So
Okay, yeah.
we started up, and then the tent will fill civilian.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Hopefully, it'll pull this way.
That's fine. It's still streaming live, though, so which is, I mean, it'll still be online, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
the most important thing, actually.
It is. So
That's, no, in fact, that's actually pretty important for someone.
Hello, hello. Excellent. Everyone ready? Welcome to the Global Breakthrough Energy Movement, Day 2. I'm your host, Jason Verbelli. I work with Searle Magnetics Incorporated, which is a subsidiary of Searle Technology Incorporated. We're proudly to present to you The Magnetic Energy by Kevin Orlowski.
Thank you, guys. You got me? Am I coming through? All right, good. This is a very condensed presentation, and so I'm going to run through some stuff very quickly. If you want to get some backstory on this, just do some searching on like Rory Johnson, Gerald Orlowski, my dad, and the magnetron motor. And that will bring you up with, there's some articles, there's some talks that my dad's done on this, and there's all kinds of information. As far as getting more about the units that I'm going to talk about, go to magneticenergy.org.uk. And I'll be presenting that. I'll go through that website again so you guys, in case you miss it. Now, magnetic energy, as I'm presenting it, it really comes from higher consciousness, okay? And when you combine this technology with higher consciousness on a global scale, and that will happen. It's going to happen. We will have a world that is pollution-free. It's a big statement. We will have a world that is free of scarcity, and that has a ton of implications to it as well. We'll have a world that's free of hunger. We'll have a world that's free of disease. We'll have a world that's free of the limitations of transportation on and around the planet and interstellar. So when you get into this world of magnetic energy, it's so much more than just like simple electricity. And what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to try to do the impossible. I'm going to present to you how you produce neutral flowing magnetic current in less than 30 minutes. Now, the reason I'm going to do that is because neutral flowing magnetic current is one of the key components of magnetic energy. And when you have neutral flowing magnetic current, if you can think it, you can do it. And that's one of the reasons why this technology has to be so intimately linked to higher consciousness. So go to magneticenergy.org.uk if you want more details on this. We're going to jump right into a unit called the mini romag. This unit is about 5 inches by 5 inches. This is a small unit, okay? This is the simplest of all the units that's on the site. Produces the equivalent of 3.5 volts, 7 amps. It runs at about 2100 RPMs, has a startup time. This is a simple unit that produces a small amount of magnetic current that's designed to run smaller devices on magnetic energy. This unit has been built by a lot of people. We used to sell the kits for it. So the engineering analysis, I'll present to you as a brief analysis of this unit. This has been corroborated by people all over the planet. I mean, there is no debate about whether or not it does what we say it does, and I just want to make that clear. This is a side view of the unit with the magnets. And if you see here, right here, this is the side view of the magnet, and then this is the brass rotor, the copper stator. It has coils around it, and I'll get into some more views. The reason I'm showing this is because there's a common theme in these units. You will never see a magnet just sitting in a rotor. Like you're never going to see in any of our units, you won't just see a magnet sitting in a brass rotor and just letting its field run wild. All the fields are contained, they are directed. This particular design, as we'll get into it, produces an orthogonal magnetic field. And so this magnet's wrapped in mylar. Then it has copper-coated steel wire around it, like a small coil around it. Then around that, it has some more copper-coated steel wires that are jutting out. That's the end of the wires of those red things coming out. And then around that, there's some mica insulation. All of these components are very specifically designed to produce a certain effect as this unit's rotating. It helps to produce a release effect when it comes into the coils. And here's just kind of an overall view. I'll go through this very quickly. So you've got your rotor and your stator. You've got your 6 coils around here. You've got your aluminum base. This is copper. That's brass. The magnets are alternating in their polarities. And as you can see right here, this shows the different ways that the magnets are alternating. And the arrows basically just show the direction of the wires around the magnets. Another common theme with these units is you'll see the magnets are almost always rotated, or they're alternating in polarities. And so you're going to see north, south, north, south, north, south, and then the bottom row, it's the same thing. The coils around these magnets are also all interconnected. So we kind of produce this little global effect of the fields around the rotor. This is a top view of the unit, and it shows you what I want you to focus on just primarily, just for a second here, is how the coils are connected. So you've got this side of this coil runs to the same, the correspondent side of this coil. This one connects over to the correspondent side, and so on. So the coils are all connected as well. So we've got communication happening between the rotor and the stator through the coils. And one thing, if you ever get to the site and you really start digging into these units, this is by far the simplest unit that we have. Try not to focus too much on the hardware. What you're trying to focus on are the energy fields created by the hardware. And that's really important because, as you see, this looks really familiar, right? See this little Jewish star happening here? See this little sacred geometry? All of these units have some sort of sacred geometry, and when these units start spinning and they hit a certain speed and they're pulsing magnetic fields, they create these sacred geometry fields, these rotating magnetic fields, and that produces some very specific effects that we have to have in order for any of this stuff to work. So let's get into this real quick. What we're comparing here is just a typical conventional generator to the mini romag generator. The conventional side is right here on the left, mini romag's on the right. And you can already see there's quite a difference. I'm just going to go through this. All of you probably recognize what this is, but I'm going to do it anyway, in case somebody online doesn't know what we're talking about. This is just a basic oscilloscope reading that is monitoring the voltage that's running through the coils. And so you can already see, as there's a couple differences I got to point out real quick. We're talking primarily about the north face of the magnet moving into the coil. As you can see, that on a typical generator, you've got the vertical axis of the coil. On the mini romag, of course, it's tangential, so it's on its side, it's horizontal. In the conventional approach, as the north face of the magnet moves into the coil, and this is all very standard stuff, I'm not saying anything nobody doesn't already know, we create a north pole polarity and negative voltage. As you can see, that the voltage drops. And then as the north face exits the typical coil, you create your opposing field and you create the opposite voltage. So what happens is, and everybody knows this, and this is one of the primary reasons why engineers and scientists say, oh my God, none of this technology can ever work. Because in a conventional generator, you immediately run into magnetic coupling. You've got, this thing locks up. This whole thing starts locking up in a conventional generator. It's a magnetic lock, and it's, the fields are created. Yes?
Sorry to interrupt. Just the information bulletin, police officers handing out parking tickets to cars within 5 feet of intersections and on stop signs and personal block drivers.
Thank you for that. If you guys didn't hear that, parking tickets if you're 5 feet of intersections. Move your cars. Okay, so on the right side, we're talking about the mini romag now. We've got this orthogonal magnetic field. As that north pole approaches the coil, everything is different in this whole process. So the north pole is created on the left side of the coil versus the bottom of the coil. It does create a minor negative voltage as shown. I'll get into this in just a second, what's happening right here. As it exits, it creates another minor negative voltage as shown. So the first thing you notice is, wow, it's an asymmetrical signal. It's completely different than a conventional generator, and there is no magnetic coupling. So the first thing you notice is, wow, this moves right through. There's nothing locking, nothing is, but what it gets even weirder. At that spike in energy, as you can see here, the magnetic flux drops to 0. Now that's really counterintuitive. It's like, what's happening here? On here, it's kind of obvious, you know, it looks like, well, typical generator, this is kind of how the pattern flows. But on the mini romag, you get this amazing spike in energy in the coil with the magnetic flux at 0. And we attribute that partly to the back EMF, but I'll also talk in a minute about what else is happening inside this unit. So just this fact alone should be enough to have any typical conventional engineer or scientist wake up. Just the fact that this very simple design does not produce magnetic coupling demonstrates the generator principle of this unit. But then let's get into how could the mini romag really act as a motor though? How could it sustain its running? Now keep in mind, this unit will only continue running if it's joined to another unit that's pulling energy off of it. And that's really critical to note. Now the other units aren't necessarily like that, but this is the simple design. This is the basic. This is the little baby of the units. There's a phenomenon that's happening as we've got these alternating poles saturating these coils. This coil right here, as it goes through its interchange with this magnet, this coil attracts the next magnet. So not only is there no magnetic coupling, but as the magnets are moving around the rotor, the next coil is pulling the magnet toward it because of the charge that's created in the coil. And so this really demonstrates how the unit can run as a motor as well as a generator. Now, the magnetic pulse generation cycle for neutral magnetic current, that's a kind of a mouthful. If you can understand this cycle and master this cycle, you can produce an unlimited amount of neutral magnetic current. And I'll talk for a little bit in a second about why that might be important and what we can actually do with that. So we start off combining polarities. So we're alternating the magnets, we're saturating the coils with opposing fields. Now, but the fields they're not arguing with each other. These fields want to be together. They want to come together inside the coil. Every little thing about this basic unit is precisely designed to produce this effect. The strength of the magnets, the speed of the rotor, the size of the coil, the size of the wire on the coil, everything works in conjunction to allow a magnetic buildup to happen every time a group of magnets passes the coil. If those ratios aren't correct, the unit will not function. You have to have it exactly as we're saying. Exactly. I mean, and then you can play around with it, and you can get lower effects and but essentially you have to have the correct ratios. Because as we get a magnetic buildup, you got to picture you've got 6 magnets in alternating polarities. They're turning in front of 6 different coils, but all those coils are connected. So every time a south pole hits a magnet, a north pole's hitting that same coil. It's coming through the other wire. And that's happening all over the unit. We're blending polarities like crazy in this unit. And we're producing this neutral effect. And then what happens right here is we achieve threshold. So the magnets get saturated. The magnets saturate the coils. The coils get saturated to the point where they're going to breach threshold, and they're going to produce a neutral magnetic pulse. That neutral magnetic pulse is then what we are going to capture. We're going to blend that with the other pulses, and this unit produces about 1,200 pulses a second. When you open up the coils and you let the wires flow to another unit, those neutral magnetic pulses make a nice little stream of magnetic current. They all combine. So we're achieving threshold with the pulses. Ideally, you would offer the pulses a path. And that path could be like we have a lot of units, but it could be like a pump, for example. You put a couple mini romags together, you offer them the pump, and the pump will draw the neutral magnetic current out of the mini romags. If you don't connect the mini romag to another unit, what happens is the coils will just stay saturated. And if they stay saturated, it's not going to run itself because it's not going to create that draw. It's not going to create that field of attract. So you offer the pulse a path. As soon as you do that, you breach the coils with magnetic pulses. The magnetic pulses are already on their way. The stuff travels faster than light. It gets into like quantum mechanics and quantum entanglement and all kinds of stuff. As soon as those pulses leave, those coils have communicated with the coils around the magnet. You've got this void of energy that happens. And it looks like there's no magnetic loss happening. It looks like the magnets just went dead for a second. But then you've got this great spike in energy in the coils, which we showed a second ago. So what happens is this unit has a draw factor. All the units on the site have a draw factor. When you create that void, that draw factor rushes in. Now, this is really critical because the unit has to pulse at a certain frequency or a certain pulse rate to have that draw factor be optimal, okay? So the Earth has a pressure flow around it. It has a pressure flow of energy around it. In order to tap into that pressure flow, we've got to synchronize with it. So this unit, when it's spinning at the correct RPM, and you're saturating those coils and you're letting those pulses leave, we're tapping into that system of energy that's all around us. And it'll fill that void, it'll recharge the system, it'll saturate those coils, and it'll do it again. And it'll do it at about 1,200 times a second. Now, for more information, there's more detail on this stuff at the website, magneticenergy.org.uk. This is the romag generator, and this is the larger version of the mini romag generator. It has significantly higher output. This is just kind of an open view, so you can just kind of see into it. And I'll talk about that just for a quick second. It's about 180 pounds, about this big, about that high. It produces the equivalent of 50 horsepower. It runs things like this. This is a magnetic pump that's designed to water a 100-acre farm. Runs about 1,600 RPMs. It's pretty small, about 9 inches in diameter. And here's a magnetic water purifier. The point of this is I'm showing you that neutral magnetic current can be put to work. If you've got the right devices, it can do things like purify water, like pump water, like run engines, like this magnetic piston. This thing is interesting because you can join them in a series like you could any set of pistons. It produces 5,600 piston strokes. It's 7 horsepower per piston. But the fascinating thing about this is it doesn't have rotation on its side. It doesn't have like after these units get in their startup phase and they start running the way they're supposed to, they have a little bit of rotation assisting them. This doesn't have that benefit. So what this unit really demonstrates is that the pressure flow around the planet is so incredibly consistent and it's so high speed, one lapse in that pressure flow and this thing stops working. And so we rely on this. Now this is the Magnagen engine. Over the years, I mean, we've sold kits, we've helped people build units around the world, we've been involved in a lot of projects on this stuff. Rory Johnson initially developed the magnetron motor, and after he died, my dad worked very closely on that engine. And this is the sister unit to the magnetron motor. This is 480 horsepower. This is a strong unit. This can replace internal combustion engines. The point I want to make with this is that if you know the ratios and you understand the technology, you can scale these things up, you can scale them down. It doesn't matter. And they can be large. They can run houses. They can run cities. They can run anything you want. They can also be very small as long as you keep the ratios intact. This is a counter-rotating magnetic unit, and the only reason I included this one in here is because it demonstrates that if you combine neutral magnetic current with certain elements like crystals and stuff, you will produce various effects. One of the effects of this is a rhodonite crystal in here, and this is all cut away so you can see, but this actually extends out here and everything. When you combine neutral magnetic current at a certain frequency with like rhodonite crystal and other crystals, you will produce a light. So you got like a magnetic light, and the idea, this is just to demonstrate that the units can do all kinds of stuff. This is kind of the mother of the units, the particle transmuter. It's designed to produce very clean neutral magnetic current that can run devices. This is something that you could basically decentralize the power grid with in the future. You could have like several houses running on this. These can be made in various sizes as well. This is a motor that runs in conjunction with that unit, runs on neutral magnetic current, produces horsepower. This is a heater, and the purpose of this is just to show, I included this in this brief PowerPoint just to show that when you take neutral magnetic current and you combine it with certain gases, you also produce certain effects like heat. So you can do this like, you can imagine this, using it for heat homes or using it in industry or whatever you need. You can also produce cooling depending on what you do with it. So magneticenergy.org.uk, and let me see what our time is. I got a few minutes. Okay, so what can neutral magnetic current do? And I'm just going to give a few quick examples because we're on a kind of a time schedule. Are you sure? Okay. So, the most obvious thing that neutral magnetic current can do is power magnetic devices. That's kind of the point of it to some degree, right? But you can pulse neutral magnetic current. Now this is kind of where the quantum mechanics of this comes into play. We really are dealing with an energy that exists at the quantum level. So this stuff can travel through anything. Earth, water, air, space. It doesn't really matter. You can pulse this energy and you can sync up units and they become quantum entangled, and it can do pretty much, it can go as fast as you can imagine, nearly an infinite velocity, much faster than the speed of light, and it can go through just about anything. Now, our society currently in our so-called technological age, which is great. I'm not knocking what's happened, okay? It's good. We've achieved a lot. I mean, I love driving up Highway 93 and having it be closed on the way here because a 50-mile-per-hour wind blew down a power line, and in the middle of the night all our power goes out because of our antiquated grid system that's just a joke. I mean, I love all that stuff. Don't get me wrong. I love computers. I love the current technology. And maybe without the current technology, maybe we really couldn't have magnetic energy. So maybe there's a blessing in disguise there. But our society has been functioning with positive and negative, with ones and zeros, with plus and minus. It's like we're painters and we've got one brush in one hand and one brush with the other hand, and we've got two colors of paint. We got black and white, and that's it. And we've created this entire world on two colors. When you get into magnetic energy, it is so far superior to electricity and its versatility. Every single magnet has a different polarity. Every single pulse rate does something different. The elements that make up the magnet, the speed of the pulse rate, the intensity of those magnets, all these things create different polarities. When you play with this energy, when our society becomes magnetic energy driven, we will have an infinite variety of brushes. We will have an infinite variety of colors to play with. It's a completely different paradigm. You can't even compare it to electricity. This is one of the things that will come into play. There's no doubt about it. Magnetic energy pulsed at certain fields, pulsed at certain frequencies, produces force fields. Those force fields can be around your vehicles. They can be around your spaceships. They can be wherever you need them, but you'll have force fields. There's no doubt about it. Now, this gets kind of back into the quantum thing, and it gets kind of back into atomic physics and all kinds of stuff, but what I'll say about this briefly is the strong force is a myth. I know all you guys in the black government already know this, and all my friends in the FBI, you already know all this. The strong force is a myth, okay? When you subject matter and elements to certain magnetic pulse rates and frequencies, there is no strong force. And when you get into this technology and you start to see the nature of matter and the nature of energy, well, there is no matter. There's no such thing as matter. With this technology, you can replicate energy, which is what we call matter. You could replicate this. You can break this down. You can generate this from a template, an energy template that exists in a state of flux. So you could produce multiple podiums, if you will, multiple crystals, if you will. And I'll talk about this for a second. Everything that I'm presenting and everything that's on the site, this is the industrial stage of this technology. This is the hardware. This is the down and dirty. This is so that scientists and engineers can begin to understand how the pulses work, how the technology functions. But this is just the first generation of this stuff. The next generation is probably going to be crystal-based, because once you document all the pulse rates and everything that's happening in the units, and you've got all that recorded, you don't really need the units anymore. You can work straight out of crystals with this stuff. But until that happens, well, we've got units and we can use the units, and that's fine. So you can immediately see with just this alone, how you will have an end to pollution, an end to garbage. And that may be how magnetic energy is really introduced on a global scale. It may be used to just clean up things first. So we stop threatening other industries and we stop getting people killed and we stop getting all our shops destroyed. Maybe what we'll do is we'll just clean up garbage because you can use the technology to do that. And then we're not really threatening too many major players, right? So that may be how it enters the global scene, is by just being a cleaning thing. Like you can use the water purifier and the pump and all kinds of things to break down garbage, to break down matter, to clean the water, to clean the ocean, you know, everything, to clean the nuclear power plants that are spilling over in Japan. So, you know, that may be the path, and we'll see. Obviously, it can provide power for transportation. Anything that's an internal combustion unit is pretty antiquated and going to be pretty obsolete when this technology hits the scene. And then it goes way beyond that, because it's not just about giving us a better engine so that we can squeal the wheels like Rory Johnson used to do in the 70s with his magnetron motor, driving up and down the street day after day after day after day after day, just demonstrating the power of the device. Zero pollution, 480 plus horsepower. It's not really about that. It goes so far beyond just replacing an internal combustion engine. We're talking about levitation, we're talking about teleportation, we're talking about the ability to have people have transportation in a whole new way. It's a whole new paradigm. Obviously, we talked a little bit about this. It can be used to produce heat and cold, which is important, and kind of all your typical daily functions. Detecting particles up close and far away. We're talking about just replacing the technology of like telescopes and microscopes, electron microscopes, all this kind of stuff. With magnetic technology, you can get so incredibly accurate, detailed images of things that are far away or things that are up close. It really brings us not only into the quantum world, but it brings us into the galactic world in a whole new way. Alleviate gravity.